Long before the new powers of the galaxy rose, the records of humanity were buried under dust and silence. Most alien civilizations had never seen a human, only read fragments of old scripts, burned pages, and damaged star maps. In their libraries, hidden deep beneath archives, there were warnings written in trembling hands by long-dead scholars. Beware the ones who burn the stars. But those words were now treated like myth, no different from fairy tales told to frighten children. 20,000 years had passed without a single human voice, and the galaxy believed they had vanished forever. Young alien students would sometimes ask their elders, "Were humans real?" And the elders would sigh, unsure if they should answer. Some would say humans destroyed themselves in a war so great that even their ashes could not be found. Others whispered that they had left, flying far beyond the galaxy to escape their enemies. But no one truly knew. The silence of so many centuries made the mystery heavier with each passing generation. To most, humanity was nothing but a ghost story. That belief changed on a quiet day in a forgotten sector near the galactic rim. Patrol ships from a minor species were scanning debris fields for smuggler hideouts when their instruments detected something impossible. A massive shape drifted slowly through the dark, far beyond any star. At first, they thought it was a dead moon or asteroid, but when their scanners adjusted, the truth froze their blood. The object was built, not natural. It was no station, no satellite. It was a ship, huge, scarred, and ancient. The patrol captain, an insectoid creature hardened by years of dull duty, felt his mandibles click nervously. The ship was at least 30 kilometers long, forged from metals his sensors could barely identify. Strange carvings stretched across its surface, deep like wounds but deliberate, symbols etched with purpose. They were not any alien language known in the Council's vast databases. His crew, buzzing with fear, began cross-checking every archive available. After hours, one young cadet whispered in a trembling voice, "Captain, these markings resemble the ones from the forbidden records." The captain dismissed it at first, calling it superstition, but then the images were placed side by side. The resemblance was undeniable. The symbols were human. Words spread like fire through dry grass. Higher fleets arrived to inspect the drifting giant. It did not move, did not resist. It simply glided out of the void as if waking from a long sleep. The oldest scholars of the galaxy were summoned. These were frail beings, withered and bent from centuries of study, who had dedicated their lives to chasing myths. When they saw the ship's surface through holoscreens, they collapsed into whispers. "It cannot be," one gasped. "It is them. It is humanity." Panic erupted in some corners of the galaxy. Why now? Why after 20,000 years of silence? Some species rejoiced, thrilled by the return of legends, while others trembled, remembering the stories of burning skies and shattered worlds. The myths claimed humans were not the strongest in body, not the fastest, not the most numerous, but they were relentless. They adapted where others broke. They fought until even their enemies prayed for mercy. And then they disappeared, leaving behind only warnings. As fleets surrounded the object, reports confirmed it was not a ruin. Despite its scars, the vessel pulsed with faint energy, like the heartbeat of some giant creature. Its core still functioned, though at a scale that dwarfed modern engineering. Ships the galaxy considered advanced looked like toys beside it. Some commanders urged to destroy it before it fully awakened, but their weapons might not even scratch the hull. Others argued to study it, to learn from the technology hidden within. But a darker fear spread. What if its crew still lived? The galaxy had long assumed humanity was dead, but the silence now seemed less like an end and more like a waiting game. A trap hidden in the dark for those who forgot. In secret meetings, council members dug out the forbidden records, brushing off centuries of dust. They read the final entries of alien generals who once fought against humans. One line returned again and again, scratched into stone, burned into tablets, screamed into dying transmitters. "Do not let them return." The ship continued to drift, slow and patient, as if mocking the fear it inspired. Its scarred hull caught the light of distant stars, and in its shadows the alien fleet seemed smaller, weaker. Inside, no one knew if humans slept in frozen pods or if machines guided the ship. But every alien who saw it felt the same cold truth. Humanity had not vanished. They had endured. For 20,000 years, the galaxy had grown comfortable. Wars were fought, empires rose and fell, but all within predictable bounds. No one thought of predators outside their known order, but this silent arc, breaking through the void, shattered that comfort. The myths were real, the records were true, humanity was no ghost. They were returning, and the galaxy could only wait in silence, hearts pounding, for the moment when the first human voice would finally be heard again. The fleets of many alien species gathered around the drifting giant. Their ships, sleek and armed with weapons of modern design, looked like insects buzzing around the body of a sleeping beast. The object they surrounded was massive, stretching far beyond their imagination, with a hull so ancient and scarred that time itself seemed to bend around it. Its surface bore deep marks, not random damage, but deliberate carvings, symbols that glowed faintly when struck by distant starlight. The longer the fleet stared, the heavier the silence grew, as though the ship itself demanded respect. At first, the commanders believed it was a derelict. No life signs were detected, no transmissions sent, no engines burning. But the sensors revealed something else: energy. Deep inside, in chambers larger than cities, something pulsed slowly, like the heartbeat of a creature too immense to comprehend. The readings were unstable, surging and fading, as though the ship was deciding whether to awaken or remain asleep. Even the bravest captains hesitated. Among the gathered fleets was a cruiser belonging to the Zeltheri, a reptilian race known for their arrogance and cruelty. Their admiral, scaled in black and gold armor, sneered at the sight. "It is just an empty relic," he declared to the council transmission. "We should strip it and claim its power." His words drew murmurs across the comms, but none dared agree too loudly. The stories of humanity, even after so long, clung to their minds like shadows. The patrol ships scanned the hull once more. The strange markings repeated across the surface, flowing like rivers of forgotten language. No translation software could unlock their meaning. But in ancient records, broken and scattered across different civilizations, some of those symbols had been seen before. And the name attached to them was always the same: human. A hush fell on the command channels. The younger officers did not understand. To them, humans were myths, nothing more. But the older ones, those who had spent decades in the hidden libraries of their people, shivered. They remembered the warnings. Humans were small compared to other species, fragile in flesh, short in life. Yet they rose again and again from defeat, turning weakness into weapons, fear into strength, and death into victory. The galaxy had fought them once and almost lost everything. The ship, drifting in silence, seemed to mock the fleets. One alien commander, a feathered scholar warrior of the Devere, whispered, "This is not a ruin. This is a coffin, or a cradle." The thought spread like poison. Were there humans still inside? Had they slept while the galaxy forgot them? Or had their machines preserved something even worse? Records, weapons, or seeds of vengeance? Tension built higher when a small vessel dared to approach. A scout frigate edged closer, its floodlights brushing across the ancient hull. The crew transmitted images of gigantic doors sealed shut, each one large enough for a moon-sized engine to pass through. The doors were scorched and dented, evidence of battles fought long ago, but none of them were broken. Whatever had attacked this ark had failed to destroy it. That realization shook even the most confident admirals. Suddenly, the ship stirred. Not with engines or weapons, but with light. Faint lines of blue and silver began to glow along its surface, tracing the old carvings until the entire hull shimmered like a star come alive. Energy spikes leapt across scanners, setting off alarms in every nearby fleet. Crews shouted over comms, captains barked orders, and weapon systems were armed. But no strike came from the ancient ship. It did not attack. It only breathed. One fleet panicked. A nervous commander ordered a missile launch, desperate to test the thing's defenses. The projectile sped through the void, a streak of fire against the darkness. But as it neared, the ark's hull rippled. Without moving, without firing, the ship absorbed the weapon as though space itself bent to its will. The missile disappeared without a sound. Shockwaves of fear rippled through the gathered fleets. If the ship could do that without awakening fully, what power did it truly hold? Across the galaxy, news spread faster than light. The council chambers overflowed with arguments. Some demanded immediate destruction of the Ark, no matter the cost. Others urged patience, desperate to learn from its technology, but the most fearful voices whispered what many dreaded: If humans are inside, we are already too late. Within the fleets, the younger soldiers argued in secret channels. Why do our leaders tremble over myths? One asked. Humans are long dead. They are bones and dust. Another replied, if that is true, then explain why the ship is still alive after 20,000 years. The silence after that question was answer enough. The Ark's markings burned brighter, casting strange shadows on the alien ships. Those symbols were not random. They were a language older than most living empires. Somewhere deep inside, ancient machinery hummed, steady and patient. It did not rush. It did not fear. It simply waited, as though it knew the galaxy would one day return to its doorstep. When the first attempt to probe the ship's interior began, the scientists used drones fitted with drills and scanners. They tried to breach the hull, but their tools shattered against the metal. The Ark ignored them, its surface unmarred. It was not simply strong, it was indestructible by current technology. One scientist broke down in despair, muttering into his recorder, "This vessel was not built to be broken. It was built to outlive civilizations." As hours turned to days, the fleets tightened their circle. Fear kept them from leaving, curiosity kept them from retreating, and pride kept them from admitting they were helpless. The galaxy had stumbled upon something that should not exist, a reminder that the universe held secrets far older and more dangerous than anyone dared believe. And in the quiet bridge of one alien ship, an elderly historian wiped tears from his eyes as he stared at the glowing Ark. His voice cracked when he whispered to his crew, "Do you not understand? They are not gone. Humanity is only sleeping. And now the sleepers stir." Deep within the ancient Ark, the silence broke at last. Vast chambers that had been locked away for thousands of years began to tremble with sound. Metal groaned, steam hissed from vents, and a low hum filled the corridors. Stasis pods, lined up in endless rows like soldiers frozen in time, released their seals one by one. Frost cracked on the glass, dripping down like tears. For 20,000 years, these pods had guarded their precious cargo, keeping it alive while the galaxy forgot their names. Now the locks surrendered, and the first humans began to wake. A pod at the center of the chamber was the first to open. The glass cover slid back slowly, letting a rush of cold mist spill onto the steel floor. Inside lay a man, his body thin but strong, his skin pale from centuries without sunlight. His chest rose sharply, as if gasping for life itself, then steadied into deep, powerful breaths. His eyes snapped open, not with confusion, but with sharp awareness, like a predator waking from sleep, rather than a prisoner stumbling from darkness. Around him, more pods followed. A woman with sharp cheekbones and dark hair fell to her knees as the frost melted from her skin. She looked around quickly, not dazed but alert, scanning her surroundings with the instinct of a soldier. Others coughed as they emerged, shaking the stiffness from their limbs. Their movements were strange to watch. To any alien eye, humans looked fragile, too small, too soft, their muscles lean compared to the towering warriors of other species. But in their eyes burned something different, something fierce. It was not just life, it was purpose. The first man stood, his bare feet pressing onto the icy floor. He pressed a hand against the nearest wall, feeling the vibration of the Ark beneath his palm. "It held," he whispered, his voice rough with centuries of silence. His words echoed in the chamber, and the other humans paused. They were alive because the Ark had kept its promise. It had endured storms, battles, and time itself, and now it had delivered them back into the galaxy. They began to speak with one another, their voices quiet but steady, as if they had only slept through a single night instead of 20 millennia. Their language was old, yet the sound of it carried strength. One woman pressed her forehead to the cold metal, tears forming in her eyes. "We return," she murmured. The others nodded. There was no shock, no disbelief. They had expected this moment. They had prepared for it. Elsewhere in the Ark, massive machines stirred awake. Gears turned slowly, lights blinked back to life, and ancient reactors breathed deep. The heartbeat of the ship grew stronger, vibrating through every wall and floor. Power surged, illuminating vast halls filled with records, weapons, and technology long lost to the galaxy. The humans moved quickly, checking systems, reviving their companions, and restoring command consoles. Their actions were practiced, disciplined, like soldiers following orders from a plan written ages ago. Meanwhile in orbit, alien fleets watched with mounting dread. Sensors screamed warnings. Life signs were appearing inside the Ark. Dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands. The numbers kept climbing, each pulse confirming what they feared. Humans lived. They had not been wiped out. They had been sleeping, waiting for this exact day. Inside the chamber, a young soldier staggered to his feet, clutching the wall as strength returned to his limbs. He turned to the older man, the first to awaken. "Commander, how long?" His voice cracked with the weight of the question. The commander's jaw tightened. "Too long," he said. "The galaxy has forgotten us, but we have not forgotten the galaxy." The woman with dark hair moved to a console at the center of the room. Her hands, though trembling slightly from her long sleep, danced across the keys with skill. The console flickered to life, displaying maps, archives, and coded messages. The data flowed across the screen, revealing the truth of their exile, the battles they had lost, the betrayal that had forced them to leave everything behind. She clenched her fists as she read. "They thought we would never return," she whispered. They were wrong. One by one, humans armed themselves with what little remained in storage. Weapons, though ancient, still glowed with energy beyond alien comprehension. Swords made of light, rifles humming with focused plasma, armor that clung to their skin like a second body. Each item had waited alongside them, relics of a forgotten war. When the humans wore them, they did not look fragile anymore. They looked unstoppable. The commander raised his head and listened. Beyond the walls, beyond the corridors, he could hear the hum of the alien fleet circling the Ark. Their scanners and weapons were trained on this place. He knew what awaited them outside. Fear, suspicion, and hatred. But humans did not shrink from fear. They thrived in it. He looked at his people, each one standing taller now, their eyes burning with fire. "We were silent," he said softly. "Now we speak again, and they will listen." As if answering his words, the Ark released a deep vibration that echoed across the void. Massive engines that had been cold for millennia rumbled to life. Thrusters as wide as cities glowed faint blue, casting light across the alien fleets. Energy surged into every system, shaking the very fabric of space. The humans felt it beneath their feet and in their bones. The Ark was awake. In the observation decks, humans pressed their hands to the glass, staring out at the fleets that surrounded them. They did not flinch at the sight of countless alien warships. They only stared with calm, steady eyes. One soldier whispered, "They don't know what we are. Not yet." Outside, alien commanders argued frantically. Should they attack now before the Ark fully activated? Should they retreat before its true power revealed itself? But the decision no longer belonged to them. The humans had awakened, and with them, the silence of 20,000 years had ended. Their footsteps echoed in the ancient corridors, steady and unyielding, like drums calling the galaxy to war. Across the galaxy, fear spread like fire. The moment life signs were confirmed inside the ancient Ark, the Great Galactic Council was called into emergency session. The chamber, built in a colossal ring station at the core of Council space, overflowed with delegates from hundreds of species. Their voices clashed in a storm of panic, anger, and disbelief. Holograms of the Ark flickered above the chamber, glowing with energy, while data reports scrolled past. Human stasis pods active, systems online, unknown weapons charged. The elders of the council trembled in their seats. They had lived long enough to study the forbidden records in secret, and they knew the danger. The younger delegates, those who had never believed in human existence, shouted louder, demanding proof that this was not a trick. But the evidence was undeniable. Thousands of human life signs were awake, and the Ark's power dwarfed anything modern fleets could muster. One massive creature, an iron-skinned representative of the Krath Dominion, pounded the floor with his claws. His booming voice silenced the chamber. "They cannot be allowed to return. Do you not remember what is written? Humans burned entire fleets. They slaughtered armies. They fought even when death was certain. If we allow them to rise again, we invite our own end." His words stirred the hall, but not all agreed. A slender, silver-eyed delegate of the Valar Confederacy shook her head. "You speak of myths. We have lived in peace for centuries. What proof do we have that humans are still the same? Perhaps they are weakened. Perhaps time has broken them. This could be our chance to learn from them, to absorb what they left behind." Her suggestion was met with hisses, growls, and shouts. Old rivalries between species flared up. each blaming the other for cowardice or recklessness. Yet behind the noise, the same truth pressed down on them all. The galaxy had not been ready for this. It had grown too comfortable in the absence of predators. In hidden corners of the chamber, older species whispered to one another. The Tazari archivists, whose libraries stretched back before the Council itself, confirmed the grim reality. The last wars with humanity ended not with victory, but with stalemate. One rasped, "We could not defeat them. They vanished before we broke them. If they return, it is not peace they bring. It is unfinished war." The council speaker, a tall being of living crystal, finally demanded silence. The hall dimmed, and the great hologram of the Ark expanded until it filled the chamber. The speaker's voice echoed coldly, "We stand at a moment that will decide the future of every species here. Humanity has awakened. We must choose. Do we strike now, while they are still few, or do we risk waiting to see what they intend?" The words struck like thunder. 1,000 debates erupted. Some demanded immediate attack, gathering all fleets to crush the Ark before it fully rearmed. Others warned that such an assault could fail, and if it failed, the humans would never forgive them. One delegate cried out, "If we fire first, we prove their legends right, that we fear them because they are stronger." Another countered, "If we do not fire, we give them time to remember how strong they are." While the chamber drowned in arguments, in the shadows of the balcony, a frail historian named Oren shook his head. He had studied the human wars his entire life, chasing fragments of their history across broken archives. Now, seeing the council's fear, he whispered to himself, "It will not matter. Humans will not wait for our decision. They will decide for us." Back near the Ark, fleets were already tightening their circle. Thousands of ships hovered in cautious formation, their weapons armed, their crews restless. Orders shifted with every hour. Some captains prepared to attack, others held back, unsure if their first strike would be their last. The silence from the Ark was unbearable. Not a word, not a warning, not a threat, just quiet, patient quiet, as though the humans inside were listening, watching, weighing their enemies. On one flagship, the alien Admiral Vareth argued with his staff. "We must strike before dawn cycle," he snarled. "If we hesitate, we give them control of the field." But his second officer, younger and more cautious, replied, "Admiral, our scans show their defenses are beyond comprehension. If we fail to disable them instantly, they will retaliate. And if the old stories are true, retaliation from humans is not survivable." The Admiral's claws dug into his chair. He had fought many battles, crushed countless enemies. But this was different. Fighting humans was not war. It was stepping into the jaws of something that had once terrified the galaxy into silence. Back in the council chamber, desperation rose to its peak. One faction demanded negotiations. Another demanded annihilation. The speaker finally called for a vote, but even before the tally could be finished, alarms shook the chamber. The Ark had moved. Reports screamed through the networks. The ancient ship had shifted its orbit. Its thrusters, dormant for ages, glowed with pale fire. It was not retreating, it was positioning itself. Every fleet around it scrambled into readiness. Panic erupted across the council hall as news flashed on the central holo. Delegates shouted in terror, but the speaker silenced them with a single phrase that echoed through the chamber like a death sentence. "It begins." Far away, in the silence of space, the humans aboard the Ark stood at their command stations. Their leader looked out through the observation deck, his eyes hard as stone. He saw the fleets arrayed against them, countless ships bristling with fear and weapons. Yet his voice was calm when he spoke. "They argue. They hesitate. They think we are as they remember us. Let them fear. Let them wait. When we move, they will understand." And so the council, for all its power and wisdom, sat paralyzed, unable to decide whether to destroy or to plead. The galaxy itself held its breath, knowing the silence of 20,000 years had ended not with peace, but with a choice none were ready to make. In the dark silence of space, the Ark finally spoke. For days it had floated quietly, surrounded by alien fleets trembling with fear and indecision. Then, without warning, every comm system in the sector crackled to life. Ships, stations, and even the council itself received the same transmission. It was not a threat, not a plea, not a declaration of war. It was a voice, deep, steady, and undeniably human. The words were simple. "This is Soul Ark. We return for what was lost." The transmission lasted only seconds. yet it echoed through every corner of the galaxy. On crowded planets, civilians froze in their streets as the words played across public channels. In military outposts, hardened soldiers felt their spines turn cold. In the council chamber, silence fell so heavy that not even the most arrogant delegate dared to speak. The voice was not loud, not angry, but it carried weight, the weight of history. It was like the growl of a predator reminding prey that it had always been there, hidden in the shadows. On the observation decks of alien flagships, officers exchanged fearful glances. Many had expected a scream of rage or a demand for surrender or promises of vengeance. But this was worse. The humans had spoken with calm certainty, as if they needed no threats, as if their return was not an event to argue about, but a fact that no one could change. In distant colonies, whispers began. Farmers, miners, and workers who had never heard of humans now spoke their name with fear. "Who are they?" children asked, and parents had no answer except old ghost stories. Some said humans were monsters, destroyers who turned planets into fire. Others said they were survivors, a species so stubborn that even time could not kill them. Whatever the truth, one thing became clear. Humanity was no myth. Humanity was real. Humanity was awake. Within the fleets, panic began to grow. Captains shouted orders, raising shields and priming weapons, expecting an attack to follow the broadcast, but no attack came. The Ark remained still, glowing faintly with ancient power, its engines whispering as if laughing at the fear it had unleashed. The silence after the message was heavier than before. The humans had spoken only once, but that single sentence carried more weight than 1,000 speeches. On the Council's homeworld, the leaders argued late into the night. Some said the humans had only claimed their lost history, that perhaps they wanted nothing more than recognition. But the older voices, those who remembered the forbidden records, shook their heads. "Humans never ask," one elder hissed. "They take. If they say they return for what was lost, it means they will not leave without it." Across the galaxy, the meaning of those words was debated endlessly. What had been lost? Was it territory, technology, or something more mysterious? Did they seek revenge against the descendants of those who had once fought them, or did they simply want to reclaim their place in the order of the stars? No one knew, and not knowing was worse than any clear threat. Inside the Ark, humans moved with purpose. They watched the transmissions of the galaxy's response, reading the fear in every alien face. Their leader stood tall before his people, repeating the words he had sent. "We return for what was lost," he said again, his voice steady. "Not for conquest, not for slaughter, but for memory, for dignity, for the place they tried to erase." His people nodded, fire burning in their eyes. To them, the words were not just a message, they were a promise. In one sector, a reckless alien fleet commander attempted to test humanity's patience. Believing the humans were bluffing, he ordered a barrage of warning shots across the Ark's bow. Bright streaks of plasma flashed through the void. But before they could even land, the Ark shimmered with a ripple of light. Space itself bent, swallowing the blasts into nothingness. The alien crews screamed in disbelief as their most advanced weapons vanished as if they had never existed. Then, once more, silence. The Ark did not retaliate, it did not destroy the attackers. It simply ignored them, as if their firepower was meaningless. That insult cut deeper than any open threat. To the attackers, it was as though the humans had said, "You are not worth our time." The report of the failed attack reached the Council within hours, and the panic deepened. Some demanded immediate surrender, offering tribute before humanity demanded it. Others still pushed for total war, fearing that waiting only gave the humans more power. But the galaxy remained frozen, each faction too frightened to move first. In backwater worlds, cults began to form. Some worshipped humanity as returning gods, the ones who would tear down the corrupt council and build a new order. Others cursed their name, praying to their deities for protection against the demons from the past. The voice of one man, carried across the stars, had divided entire civilizations. On the Ark, the humans prepared quietly. They did not argue, they did not boast. Their long silence had been broken, and the galaxy now trembled under the sound of their return. For 20,000 years, humanity had been erased from history books, treated as myth. But myths did not speak. Myths did not awaken. Myths did not pilot ships that shrugged off the strongest weapons in the galaxy. The alien fleets that watched from a distance finally understood something terrifying. Humans did not need to threaten. They did not need to destroy a single ship. By simply speaking, they had shifted the balance of power. By saying they had returned, they had forced the galaxy to look at them, to remember them, to fear them once again. The Ark floated silently, its lights glowing like the eyes of something ancient and alive. Inside, humans walked the halls, checking their weapons and studying the star maps of a galaxy that had forgotten them. Their leader stood before the viewing window, staring at the countless alien ships encircling them. He smiled faintly, not with arrogance, but with certainty. They waited for a roar, he said softly, but a whisper was enough. And across the galaxy, from the richest core world to the poorest outpost, that whisper kept repeating in every mind. This is Solark. We return for what was lost. The galaxy held its breath after the humans spoke. The fleets surrounding the Ark did not move, their weapons armed but frozen, waiting for the next step. Some believed the humans would stay silent again, but humanity had never been a species of stillness. When the first challenge came, it came fast and with fire. A coalition of alien fleets, drawn from many proud empires, decided they could not wait any longer. Fear pushed them into action. Their admirals believed striking now, before the Ark fully woke, was their only chance. Thousands of ships aligned, forming a wall of power across the stars. Engines burned, cannons charged, and the order was given to advance. Their commanders broadcast their warning: leave this space or be destroyed. But the Ark gave no answer. Weapons fired. A storm of plasma, lasers, and missiles streaked across the void, enough energy to erase entire planets. The galaxy watched in silence, convinced this would be the end of the human Ark. But then the impossible happened. The Ark's hull shimmered, not with shields as other ships used, but with bending light, as if space itself obeyed its command. The storm of weapons vanished before touching it. Explosions folded into silence, swallowed by invisible defenses. Not a single scar appeared on the Ark. It floated untouched, majestic and calm, as if mocking the fleets that had dared to strike. Inside their ships, alien crews shouted in panic. Direct hits! No effect! No effect at all! Admirals barked new orders, trying heavier barrages, experimental torpedoes, even weapons forbidden by treaties. But nothing pierced the Ark's invisible armor. Every attempt disappeared like stones thrown into the ocean. The fear inside the fleets turned to desperation. Then the Ark moved. Its colossal body shifted slowly, turning its massive frame toward the attacking fleets. The engines ignited with a glow brighter than suns, yet it released no heat, no wave of destruction. Instead, the Ark opened like a living thing. Hidden panels slid apart, revealing lines of glowing structures that hummed with ancient energy. For a heartbeat, the galaxy feared annihilation. But the Ark did not fire to kill. Beams of pure light shot out not as weapons but as whips of control. Each struck an enemy ship, and in an instant their systems collapsed. Engines died, shields fell, weapons went dark. One by one, ships became lifeless husks drifting through the void. Crews screamed as their controls locked, their vessels powerless in the shadow of the human Ark. In less than a minute, thousands of ships were disabled. Not destroyed, not broken, just silenced. The humans had not killed a single enemy, but they had shown the galaxy a truth more terrifying than slaughter. They could end fleets without spilling blood. They could win without firing a shot of war. Across the galaxy, the broadcast played live. Billions watched as the proud coalition crumbled like children's toys. The council chambers fell into chaos. Delegates shouted in disbelief, their voices shaking with terror. Some demanded surrender, others demanded retreat. But one thing was certain: humanity was no myth, and their technology was beyond anything the galaxy could match. On the observation deck of the Ark, if human commanders stood calmly, their faces unreadable as the alien fleets floated helpless before them. A younger soldier clenched his fists, asking, "Why not finish them?" His voice burned with the anger of old wounds, the memory of betrayal from ages past. But the commander only shook his head. Death is mercy. Fear is power. The message was clear. By sparing their enemies, humanity had sent a deeper warning. They had chosen restraint, not weakness. Every disabled ship was a reminder that humans did not need to destroy to win. They were hunters, patient and precise, able to control the battlefield without bloodshed. And every alien who floated powerless in that moment knew it. Inside the Ark, the humans began to speak among themselves, their voices carrying through the steel corridors. They talked of memories, of battles fought so long ago that even the galaxy's oldest species barely remembered. They feared us then, like one woman said bitterly, and they fear us now. Another answered, fear is not enough. They must remember why. Back in the council chamber, arguments turned to chaos. One delegate screamed, "They have returned as gods." Another shouted, "No, monsters." Yet all of them knew the truth in their hearts. The galaxy had grown lazy, soft in its peace, while humans had waited in silence, sharpening themselves into a weapon beyond imagination. The disabled fleets drifted, helpless and humiliated. Their soldiers could only stare at the glowing arc that had humbled them without effort. Some cursed humanity, swearing revenge. Others fell into stunned silence, their faith in their leaders shattered. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy understood what true power looked like. Then the Ark released its prisoners. The beams of control faded, and the alien ships flickered back to life. Engines reignited, shields returned, weapons hummed again. The humans had not only disabled them, but also given them back their strength. It was an insult sharper than destruction. The fleets staggered away, their pride broken, their courage shattered. On their comms, one final human transmission echoed, "We do not seek war, but if you test us again, we will not be so merciful." The words were not shouted, not screamed. They were spoken with calm certainty, and that calmness terrified the galaxy more than any threat could. The fleets retreated, limping away from the Ark. Reports flooded the council, each more desperate than the last. The message spread across the stars. Humans had defeated the strongest fleets without a single death. They had proved their power, and they had done it with mercy. That mercy, however, was not kindness. It was dominance. In every corner of the galaxy, from noble palaces to filthy slums, the story spread. Humanity was back. Their silence was over. Their first act had been a demonstration of power that bent the laws of war itself. Now every species wondered the same thing. If this was only a test, what would happen when the humans truly unleashed their strength? On the Ark, the commander stood before his people, his face calm but his eyes burning with fire. "They have seen," he said. "They have tasted fear. Now they will listen, and soon they will remember who we are." And the galaxy, for all its power and pride, trembled. In the heart of the Ark, the humans gathered in vast halls filled with glowing consoles and endless records. Dust and frost had covered everything for centuries, but now the lights were alive again, casting blue and silver across the faces of those who had awakened. The walls hummed with power, and deep inside the ship's databanks, ancient memory banks unlocked themselves, flooding the screens with history long buried. The humans stood silently at first, reading the words of their ancestors, learning what had been lost while they slept. The files told the truth of their exile. The last wars had not ended in defeat, but in betrayal. Humanity had fought countless enemies at once, burning fleets, crushing armies, surviving against impossible odds. But when the galaxy realized they could not break humans with war, they turned to deception. Treaties were signed, promises made only to be broken in secret. Entire colonies were attacked under false flags. Supplies were poisoned. Diseases were unleashed. One by one, human strongholds fell, not because of weakness, but because the galaxy united in fear to erase them. The commanders of that age had made a choice. They could fight to the last breath and drag the galaxy into the fire with them, or they could vanish into the dark, carrying their people in the Ark, waiting for a time to return. They had chosen silence, not surrender. For 20,000 years, their children had slept while the galaxy forgot. As the truth spread through the crew, anger burned in their eyes. Some clenched their fists, others whispered curses under their breath. But more than anger, there was clarity. They now remembered why they were here, why they had endured the cold silence of centuries. This return was not an accident, it was the fulfillment of a promise. At the center of the hall, the commander stood tall, his hand resting on the glowing console. His voice carried through the chamber, steady and sharp. They thought time would erase us. They thought silence would bury us. But we are here, alive, and we remember. His words echoed, and the humans around him raised their heads with pride. No one looked weak now. No one looked lost. They were soldiers again, survivors again, predators awakened from hibernation. Outside, alien fleets still hovered in the void, Their crews watching with fear. Reports flooded back to the council, confirming the worst. Humans had not only survived, they remembered everything. And if they remembered, then vengeance was coming. In the chamber of the council, one elder struck his staff against the floor and shouted, "This is no new species. This is the same enemy. They will never forgive us. They will come for what we stole." Inside the Ark, the humans began unlocking weapons vaults sealed for millennia. Doors as thick as mountains hissed open, revealing racks of rifles that glowed with dormant energy, blades that pulsed like living fire, and armor that hummed when touched. Every item carried the craftsmanship of a people who had built not just tools of war, but symbols of defiance. The humans armed themselves quietly, without celebration, like workers preparing for a long-awaited task. One young soldier lifted a rifle, running his hand along its surface. His face hardened as he whispered, "My ancestors carried this." Another soldier placed a helmet over his head and said, "They wanted us to finish what they could not." There was no fear in their voices, only determination. Then the archives revealed something darker. The names of planets, colonies, and cities that had once been theirs, all wiped clean from galactic records. Maps showed vast territories once human, now swallowed by alien empires that claimed humans never existed there. For the crew of the Ark, these maps were not just history, they were scars. Every stolen world was a wound, every erased name a demand for justice. The commander turned to his officers and spoke with calm fire. "They will not give back what they took. They will lie, they will resist, but we will not beg. We will take what was ours." His words were met with nods and fierce eyes. To them, the galaxy's denial was nothing new. Humanity had always thrived not because the stars welcomed them, but because they carved their place in the stars with blood and sweat. As the Ark's systems came fully online, the galaxy began to feel the weight of its return. Signals pulsed outwards, activating hidden beacons that had slept as long as the humans themselves. On distant moons and forgotten outposts, machines older than most empires stirred. Relays flashed to life, carrying human codes into the void. The galaxy realized with horror that this Ark was not alone. It was the first, the spearhead. More might follow. Meanwhile, among the alien fleets, morale cracked. Some soldiers begged their captains to retreat, to flee before the humans turned their full wrath upon them. Others whispered that perhaps they should surrender now, before the humans demanded more than territory. But the admirals knew surrender would mean the end of their power. Still, none dared to attack again. The memory of how easily their fleets had been disabled was still raw, like a wound they could not stop bleeding. In one quiet chamber of the Ark, a group of humans sat together, sharing their thoughts. A young woman asked softly, "Do you think they will ever accept us?" An older man answered with a bitter smile, "They do not need to accept us. They need to remember that we exist. That is enough." The humans did not cheer or shout. They prepared in silence, because silence had always been their greatest weapon. They had used it for 20,000 years. And now, as they moved again, the galaxy trembled, not from what they had done, but from what they promised to do. And in the stillness of space, the Ark drifted forward, its lights burning brighter, its engines whispering of power yet to be unleashed. To the galaxy, it was a nightmare made real. To humanity, it was simply the continuation of a story that had never ended. They had not died, they had not surrendered, they had waited, and now they had returned to claim what was theirs. The Ark drifted toward the galactic core, its enormous frame glowing like a moving star. Alien fleets scrambled to follow, but none dared to block its path. Every captain remembered too well what had happened when they tried to test it. Their ships disabled, their pride shattered, their weapons made useless. Now they kept their distance, like frightened animals circling a predator they could not challenge. The galaxy's fear grew with every slow, deliberate step the humans took. On countless worlds, people watched in silence as news spread. Giant screens in capital cities displayed images of the Ark moving with unstoppable grace. Merchants paused in the middle of their trade, children clutched their parents, and soldiers stood frozen at their posts. The words from humanity's first broadcast repeated endlessly in their minds: "We return for what was lost." Some species tried to comfort themselves by saying the humans only wanted land or technology or resources. But the older voices whispered that humans never wanted just one thing. They wanted everything that was theirs. Inside the council chamber, panic was no longer hidden. Delegates screamed at each other, their voices filled with desperation. Some argued to prepare for war, to unite every empire under one banner before it was too late. Others shouted for peace, for negotiation, for any chance to avoid what they all feared was coming. The Speaker of the Council, shining like fractured glass, struggled to calm them, but failed. The truth was clear. The galaxy had no answer. Against humans, there was no balance of power, no safe strategy, no certain path. Back inside the Ark, the humans stood ready. Their leader gazed out at the stars through a wide viewport, his eyes burning with quiet fire. Before him stood soldiers and citizens alike, armed with relics of their forgotten empire. The walls around them glowed with the hum of ancient machinery, alive and awake after thousands of years. The leader raised his voice, calm and steady. For 20,000 years they believed we were gone. They thought silence meant death. But silence was our weapon. We waited while they forgot. Now they will remember. The humans listened in silence, their faces set in determination. They were not celebrating, not roaring with triumph. Their strength came not from noise, but from the cold certainty that they were fulfilling a promise written long ago. To them, this was not the beginning of conquest. It was the continuation of a war that had never truly ended. As the Ark approached the heart of the galaxy, its presence grew heavier. Planets trembled at the energy it released, sensors failed, and entire networks crashed under the strain of its signals. The Council dispatched envoys, desperate to speak before disaster struck. But the humans did not respond. Their silence was louder than any words, a silence that pressed down on every world and every soul. Finally, the Ark entered the skies of a central world, a jewel of alien civilization, home to billions. The fleets that had sworn to defend it pulled back, unwilling to risk the wrath of the humans again. The Ark cast its shadow across the planet, blotting out the sun. For hours, nothing happened. The people below lived in terror, convinced that destruction was about to fall, but the humans did not fire. They did not burn. Instead, the Ark transmitted one simple image across the galaxy, a map of the stars. The map showed ancient human colonies, worlds erased from history, now part of alien empires. The message was clear without words. Humanity had come to take back what was theirs. No speeches, no threats, just a reminder of stolen ground and broken promises. For the first time in history, the galaxy realized it was not just facing an enemy. It was facing justice, the kind that came with fire and steel. Among the fleets, soldiers trembled. Admirals whispered in secret, wondering if surrender would save them. On the streets of alien worlds, civilians prayed, not to their gods, but to the humans, begging silently to be spared. Fear spread like a plague, stronger than any weapon. Inside the Ark, the commander finally spoke to his people once more. They will resist, he said. They will lie, they will betray again, but they will also fall as they always have, because we are not like them. We do not break, we do not forget, and we do not forgive. The words rolled through the halls, heavy with truth. His people answered not with cheers, but with hard silence, a silence sharper than blades. And so the Ark advanced. It did not need to rush. It did not need to strike first. Every moment it moved, the galaxy bent around it. Empires that had stood for millennia now trembled like children. The humans inside knew this was only the beginning. The true war had not started yet, but the galaxy was already theirs, in fear, if not in blood. On one distant observation post, an alien officer stared at the Ark through his trembling hands. He whispered words his ancestors had written in despair long ago, words that now returned to life. Do not let them return. And as the Ark continued forward, those words spread across every world, not as a warning, but as a truth already too late to stop. The silence of 20,000 years had ended. Humanity had stepped back into the light. And though they had not yet fired their first true shot, the galaxy already knew the outcome. The predators had returned to the chain, and the roar of their vengeance was only just beginning.